Hello, I'm Atajan Rahimbaevna, a senior lecturer at Oregon State University. Today I will talk about forming and assessing students' independent works in credit model system. You know that it's one of the important and interesting topics for language teachers, because when we teach students, the most biggest responsibility it is assessing students' comprehension. What is an assessment itself? So different types of definitions can be given to this word. In some resources it's written that it's a measuring students' study achievements using different tasks and approaches. So different kind of criteria may be created by language teachers. Some of the teachers like interactive way of assessing their students. Some of them try to use traditional way of assessing students' comprehension. So what is the assessment itself? It's diagnosing learners' achievements of the objectives. So collecting data to make informed decisions about the progress of learners. So while diagnosing learners' achievements, we mostly gain information in order to be aware about their level and knowledge. So it is used to identify current knowledge and misconceptions about the topic. So diagnostic type of assessment can be done in the first day of teaching when teachers start to teach young learners or if it's a first lesson. So another type of the assessment, it is a formative assessment. Formative assessment used to provide feedback during the instructional process, but it's not all. That definition may not be enough for this word. Formative assessment mostly gives opportunity teachers to gradually, every day, assess their students' comprehension. It's for what? For their participation, for home assignment, for their behavior, for doing activities, participating in different kind of activities. All of them can be graded during the teaching process by language teachers. So another type of the assessment, it is a summative assessment. What is summative assessment? As the title says, it is used to sum up of learning at the end of the instructional process, at the end of the academic year, or at the end of semester. So while organizing summative assessment, students should be announced what type of criteria, what type of techniques or assessment tools are used in order to help learners participate in that activity objectively. So there exist other types of assessment, for example, authentic assessment. So authentic assessment, it makes students use real-life cases, participate in real-life situations. So it's mostly student-structured responses are required here, so direct evidences are used here. So it's a type of assessment where the idea of using creative learning experience of students, skills and knowledge is used in a realistic situation. So what does it include in itself? This type of question also may appear in your mind. Okay, observation. So observation, it's a type of technique where learners may observe. By observing, so learners will find out extra information related to the tasks in class. Essays. By writing essay, learners will be given chance to use and, of course, expand their own fantasy, their thinking skill. Relying on their own language experience, they try to do the tasks of the essay. Of course, it depends on the types of the essay. Descriptive essay, argumentative essay, or other types of essay. Personal opinion essay also can be used here. Mostly learners like to be given samples for it. So in order to assess students by this way, students should be given a first sample versions of the essays. So interviews, it's one of the interesting and of course very effective type of assessment where learners are given opportunity to do an interview with the person, with group mates, with parents, with the people who is specialty, very specialists in some kind of field. Of course, it depends on the task of the interview. So if it's written here, produce or create an interview with your friend about that topic or about the topic sport. Students have to record their own interview, and of course one day they should come and present that activity. Performance tasks. it's one of the important and interesting tasks where individually learners can express their own abilities, talents, or something what they have prepared in group or in independent style. Individually, they can use their own resources. Different kind of approaches, tools can be easily used and widely used in order to do that type of activity. So while performing tasks, they can be given criteria, some kind of characteristics for assessing, like designing, like investigation, content of the material, task response, or etc. Another type of authentic assessment may include in itself exhibitions and demonstrations. Of course, in this type of activity, individually, it's very difficult for learners to produce something or exhibit. But exhibition, it means not only exhibiting or demonstrating the biggest item, but they can individually prepare something. For example, family album. So learners may be given to prepare a family album with pictures, with information. Of course, after that, learners individually may be checked and assessed for it. Teacher-created tests. Gradually coming out of the tasks, coming out of the language material, class materials, learners may be given for short period of time different type of tests created by their teachers. After 3 units, after 5 or 6 units, teachers should plan some kind of tests where related to each other lexical topics or grammatical topics or writing topics may be used here in this type of test, and of course learners may be given chance to participate in this type of assessment. So one factor is very important. What is in this case traditional assessment in teaching? So we know that traditional assessments, it's something what teachers mostly use in order to check students' knowledge, comprehension, their readiness. It's called paper and pencil tests, multiple choice tests, true-false tests or activities. Of course, they are interesting, but not every time they are effective. So in order to do this assessment, we need to be aware about the steps of assessment. First, you should pay attention to that thing. First step, defining the learning outcomes. What is outcome? You know, while creating a lesson plan, we write down at the beginning of each lesson plan learning outcomes or lesson outcomes. It's a result what learners should achieve till the end of the lesson. So these outcomes should be fixed in our lesson plan. And of course, while teaching, in order to help learners achieve that outcome, we need to give appropriate content, appropriate materials, of course, activities, approaches and techniques, rather important thing in order to help students and in order to help you to achieve that outcome. Second step says select appropriate assessment measures. But why select? Because content is different. Content will make students practice in one lesson reading, in other lesson writing, in other lesson speaking, maybe lexis. So in this case, it depends on the content, it depends on the material what we are going to give, and of course coming out of the content of the language material, we need to select appropriate assessment. What type of assessment we are going to give our students? Maybe authentic, maybe formative, maybe different. So the third step says, analyze the results of the outcome assessed. After making students participate in some kind of assessment tool, we need to gain that information, of course the results, and of course compare to our outcomes, whether students could achieve that outcome. If the result is negative, it doesn't mean that only learners couldn't learn that material. Of course, 50% teachers also should think about their own way of teaching, should think about the quality of the content, or I guess, of course, predict another, of course, the problems and investigate other problems. Maybe problem not only in your learner, maybe problem in you, problem in your style of teaching, problem in your technical techniques, what you are using, or the activities, what you are using. So the third step will help teachers to analyze and compare the result. So the next step says, adjust or improve the program following the result of the learning outcomes assessed. What does it mean? So the teachers, after gaining or after collecting that material, what speaks about the assessment, that information not only speaks about learning, but it may speak about also teaching. That's why if something wrong with learning, you may change the program, you may change the technique, you may change even the method and of course the content. Of course we shouldn't forget about the curriculum development, of course, but teachers need to keep in mind every time teaching that not every time mistake is done by the learner. Sometimes teachers also can do lots of mistakes while teaching. So this step says adjust or improve. What should be done in order to improve, in order to make learners input that information better? So as teachers, you need to be aware about this. So the next thing important for language teachers, it is every time thinking about the improvement. Of course, in order to improve teaching process in Uzbekistan, of course, according by the President's decree, October 2019, all of the universities, approximately 50% of state and non-state university students started to be taught under ECTS program system. It is, what is it? European Credit Transfer System. So in order to teach better, language teachers, all teachers need to be aware about the ECTS system. It's a credit accumulation system. It was created to facilitate the transparency of education and recognition of academic knowledge. So why it is called by this way? Because mostly the character of the ECTS will give students opportunity to contain or input information independently. Here, independent works are more emphasized than class works. The students will get information, of course, in class, but other type of tasks are given stress to the independent work. The following are recognized as the main functions of credit model system. First, assessment of students' knowledge on the basis of rating score. Third, to create an opportunity to draw up their study plans in an individual way. What does it mean? So at the beginning of each academic year, learners are given chance to choose the subjects in order to be taught. They are free to choose a subject. The best way or the other opportunity of being taught under ECTS, according to the portal, according to this system, students may be informed and students can easily obtain all information about their learning, news about their level, about the subjects, about the hours. Everything is given in that system. So increasing the role of independent activities to develop independent study skill. Now we know that if we compare our teaching and learning process to advanced foreign experience, most hours, most classes are spent on doing independent work. It means learners are free to do different type of activities, or the most of the content or knowledge should be obtained, should be grasped by doing independent tasks. So how credits are divided. Based on the credit system requirements, the first, to upload the student the obligation to collect a total of 60 credits in 4 years out of 240 each year. Students have to spend Imagine, students have to spend 4,320 for independent education and 2,280 academic class hours. If you compare these two things, more hours are given to independent work. So what does it mean? It means that students have to work in class, but at the same time they are downloaded with lots of credit, lots of individual tasks. One credit contains in itself 30 hours, we know it. So in one credit, 30 hours are divided into two, 12 academic hours for class hours and 18 hours for independent education. It means in class they learn, they input information. They, of course, they are guided by teachers, they get more information about the topic, but 18 hours, it means it's more than class hours. That's why this program lately appeared in our education system, what is called 4+2. It also proves that thing, that 4 days they learn in class, but 2 days they spend their time at school and assignment colleges in order to practice that grasped material, that grasped theory, information and knowledge, and develop their experience at school. So what is the role of independent work in teaching in foreign language? So it develops learner autonomy. We know that students mostly, when deal with independent work, they try to develop their own understanding, they expand their outlook, of course relying on their own experience and knowledge. They try to focus on the material, and that material will help them develop their own understanding. They try to be conscious, they develop their own learning style, increase learner responsibility. So with the help of the independent works, teachers easily increase learner responsibility. Imagine in class you can use other types of class modes like pair work, group work, in the class work, teamwork, but only one type of class mode can support teachers to put mark. It's called independent work. So independent work, it shows learners' individual abilities. It improves their investigating skill. It improves the learner responsibility, because they know each one feels that they are alone, and without other group mates' assistance, without teachers' assistance, they should do that language task, and of course they should be graded for it. So interesting thing to know about the types of independent activities. So different scholars divide, of course after experimenting, divide the type of independent activities into different classification: reproducing activities, productive activities, and of course independent activities. Okay, reproducing activities mostly is a type of activity what helps students prepare for the textual summary. So why reproductive? Reproductive type of activity, when learning is given a content, specific content related to the topic in each lesson, and of course with the help of this content, learners are given tasks to reproduce it. Imagine you may give a reading material. After learning it, learner can reproduce, write summary for it, write review, write their own ideas about the context. This is called reproductive activity. Perception of education information from different resources. While doing different kind of materials related to reproductive activity, or students will focus on, or they will use other resources also, because not only teacher is the main resource in class, but outside other resources, books, journals, newspapers, internet, sites, different useful academic. So they can be easily used by the learner individually. So it helps students not only develop their class skills, but outside of class, without teacher, they can also deal with that material. Another type, second type of the independent activity, it is productive, creative activities. So productive activities, they help learners draw up a plan of the book or article. They start to create themselves. They compile a bibliographic list to accumulate scientific information. So they may focus on different kind of literatures given or suggested by the teachers. They work on this material, and of course they may produce another type of language material in target language. So another type, storytelling. Storytelling is one of the interesting activities where students have to focus on the content of the story and of course retell it to another person or to class, where using their own memory, of course, adding their own opinion. So creative or independent type of activities may include in itself essay review and writing. So essay, you know, it's one of the biggest technique used in order to develop productive writing skill in language class. So learners can create here their own essay, but different kind of situations or the problems may be suggested, may be given to students, and students can easily, using the sample version of the essay, write easily the essays. So review writing, also one of the important thing in class, because learners will find different kind of articles, maybe stories or passages from the literature. They can write a review to that material. Reflection writing for lectures. We know that upper course group students, mostly they participate in lecture classes. While sitting in lecture, they may be given task writing reflection to each lecture. While sitting in lecture, they may write their own some kind of jot down their ideas. They may write the ideas in short, briefly, but later they may write fully a reflection to the lecture, adding their own opinion. It's one best way of students participate or understand the content of the lecture material. One more time, they rely on their memory. So it, of course, not only writing here is emphasized, but only the attention also, because while reading or sitting in lecture classes, mostly students easily lose their attention. That's why reflection writing or jotting down the briefly the content of the lecture material, one of the best way of making learners develop their responsibility. Open and closed tests can also be used easily in class. Closed tests, you know what's it? So some kind of texts are given where only gaps should be fulfilled by students, of course, according to the content. So some kind of words or some kind of phrases should be fulfilled, or the answers should be given here by this way. Open tests are also best way to check students' personal ideas, because they are coming out of their own understanding, on their own knowledge and experience. Students try to fulfill some kind of sentences. So the project work. Project work is one type of activity. In later videos, I will try to give in detailed information about project work, but now I'm going to give a little information. Project work, you know that it may be organized for individual learners, but sometimes we can organize it for a group of learners, 3-4 people. 5 people may deal with one project task. Project tasks, it's a little bit difficult than classwork, because why we should give it? With the help of this type of techniques, we develop not only language abilities or soft skills of the learner, reading, writing, listening, speaking, but with the help of this type of technique, we develop learners other alternative skills like critical thinking, creativity, designing, solving problem, decision-making skills, or coming to decision, giving conclusion skills, or guessing skill, predicting, designing skills should be developed with the help of this type of technique. So the next one is poster presentation. Again, poster presentation is also done individually, where learners will choose or will be given a specific topic or task. According to this task, learner will present their performance using different kind of apps, different kind of types of presentation, projector presentation, picture, poster presentation. But among these, poster presentation is one of the best, because before performing it, learners have to create it individually at home. There may be, for example, I can give you preparing and designing a poster speaking about the hotels in Uzbekistan. Learner can easily approach to different kind of resources in order to find more information about the hotels. Of course, finding very beautiful pictures. After working on design, they try to give fresh information or write fresh information related to hotels. So after finishing that poster on a fixed date, teacher by teacher, students will perform and do poster presentation. So creative and independent activities not only will help learners to focus on creating, but dealing with other problem-based situations. One of them is case study. Case study is a technique where some kind of situation or problem is suggested for the student, where a student have to work on it, of course, in order to find a solution. One problem is given to student, and of course, student independently will work on it. After that, will write a report for it. Portfolio. Portfolio, again, is one of the best technique to use in class in order to develop independent work. So learners here will gather all of the papers, what they did according to the topic, according to lesson, something what they have found out in order to highlight some kind of topic. They may approach to different kind of internet resources and sites after finding the pictures, reviews, writing different kind of reflections, or something what they have used in order to present the home task, in order to do the tasks different given by teacher. They may collect it, maybe collected in one portfolio, and moment, of course, that portfolio will contain some kind of content. According to this content, learners will find that material, work on it, of course. After doing it, it is presented to teacher, and teachers will assess it. Scientific projects also one of the best way of making students participate in this type of technique, where students have to approach to some kind of scientific issues, articles, or independently or in a group. They try to study the problem, relying on their own experience, of course. They develop their other understanding. Out of class, they try to do that task given by teacher in order to perform it next day in class perfectly. That's why it develops responsibility. In this type of projects, mostly, they focus on and they work on different kind of scientific articles, scientific works done by someone. They again collect data related to the topic, and they know, they start to approach, start to recognize the scientific direction of learning something. So oral presentation. So while doing oral presentation, they not only develop their speaking skill, but at the same time, they before presenting that thing orally, they prepare some kind of material for it. So the next thing, very important, it is a story retelling. We know that story retelling is accepted, is considered to be one of the important technique for students who just started to develop their speaking activities. So here, story retelling may be organized by this way. So according to 5 steps, we can give learner opportunity to develop their activity, where students will at first some kind of suggested material or literature is given to student, and after that learners given specific time for the preparation. What should be done in this short period of time? So students have to focus on 5 things. First, the character of the passage. So in order to understand what's the character, they have to study or have to read that reading material. So after that, the setting of the context. So in order to understand, they should be aware about the content structure of the context. What type of text is it? So what is the structure? Is it a narrative story? By working different kind of passages, they practice and different kind of types of reading material. That's why story retelling is one of the best. The third thing is getting acquainted with a problem. It's natural that all of different content in language teaching, they contain different kind of plot or gist, we can say. So learners, while before retelling, when reading this material, they try to find out the problem of it. What is a problem? What is shown here? Family problem, health problem, or feeling problem, or what is the main gist or main idea of the reading material? So the important thing for language learners to focus on that thing. So the next thing is paying attention to the event. So in order to remember the passage action and what happened in the first passage, what happened in the second passage, or which action came after which action. So it develops here when learners try to remember that action or the events given in this content. Learners try to improve their own memory. So it's very best way of making students develop and improve their memory. So the last thing is ending. What happens is in ending. In ending, mostly learners try to speak about the conclusion, happy ending, negative ending, positive ending. Here, learners will adding their own opinion, of course, they try to give conclusion. What type of conclusion may be asked from the learner? So what would you do if you were instead of the author? What would you change in that context if you were instead of the author? So the learners are free here to finish that material. So why it should be done? Because while participating in this type of activity, learners may be free to choose any kind of reading material. Not only the context given by teacher should be read, but sometimes learner may be given chance to choose by their own way different kind of interesting context, maybe short stories, maybe fairy tales, which is interesting for them. Of course, if we give some kind of boring context, learners don't want to read it. of course, it straightly influences to their retelling. While retelling, what happens? While retelling, individually learners revise their own grammar skill, their speaking skill, memory. Of course, time by time, they add their own opinion. At the end of the retelling, of course, after retelling, maybe learners may be asked to write some kind of essay or review for this material. So it's one of the interesting way of making students be engaged into the topic, or make them be alone and, of course, relying on their own experience. They try to focus on the language material, even sitting at home. In class, they are may not be active, but at home, in order to help learners not to lose their concentration towards language learning, in order to rise their interest to language learning, we may give other additional materials in order to help learners understand the content better. Why to give more chance or student to do independent work? Because independently when they work, they feel alone, but they rely on their own experience. They build, they construct their own style of learning. They themselves start to investigate. They themselves start to study and understand. In its turn, naturally, it develops conscious learning. So independent work supports different types of alternative skills: investigating, analyzing, evaluating, describing, performing, presenting. This type of skills, alternative skills, should be, of course, developed in class. So sometimes class hours may not be enough for students or teachers to focus on or improve all language abilities. That's why while downloading the students with independent work, we try to help learners with more activities, more tasks, where students are deeply engaged into the topic. Another reason why to give independent tasks for students, because in class, we teachers need to give some kind of direction to the topic. We may give little information about the topic, but while dealing with the language material at home or while doing the tasks for independent work, they learn it deeper and deeper, not only using the resources suggested by teacher, but they may easily use other resources, other internet sites, other books or materials which may not be suggested by their teachers. So in my next video material, I will in detail explain other types of activities. Thank you for your attention.